This is Ash Ryan here with you. Special guest today, I've got Max Derrett. Max and I are going to be talking about the open world aspect of Halo Infinite in the campaign, discussing whether or not that works. We're going to review a few other aspects of the game as well. Did 343 pull a success out of their hats here, or is it subpar as far as Halo games go? Now, Max, have you been playing the Halo series like since its inception?
Since 2002, so less than a year after the first one came out.
So Halo 1, and then you've played all of them since?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you're a long-term Halo player. I'm looking at it from the perspective of someone who played Halo 1 and 2 and a little bit of Halo 3, then took a break from it, and didn't come back until Halo Infinite.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a different perspective on the game, and in fact, during the opening cutscene where I thought I was seeing like the aftermath of Halo 5 here in the opening cutscene. I had no idea what was going on. And then I found out later that, nobody knew what was going on. This was not recapping previous events. It was some new event that was happening. So that was interesting to find out. Terror Case says, probably smart, Ash. The Reach is arguably the best Halo game, but avoid 4 and 5 for sure. I've heard 4 and 5 were not great. I don't know if you would agree with that, Max, but that's what I've heard.
I'm with everybody in regards to Halo 5. I didn't think that was a very good game. In fact, it turned me off of the Halo franchise for a long time. I thought that leading up to Halo Infinite, I had a great deal of pessimism because of how Halo 5 turned out. But unlike everybody else, I actually quite liked Halo 4, even though it had there were some parts about it that were a step back from previous Halo games.
Okay, yeah. Fair. But let's talk about the open world and whether or not Halo works as an open world. So, I mean, if you're not familiar with the franchise previous to Halo Infinite, they were not open world games. They were linear missions, very big, a lot of big open areas in some cases, but they were linear. You progress from one mission to the next to the next. There's a story that's happening, and you just basically fight your way from point A to point B. That was the purpose of the game. It's a combat game. Not an RPG, not anything like that. So turning it into an open world is an interesting idea. It's not the first time that this has been done with a non-RPG game, obviously. And the most recent example that I can think of that I am most familiar with is Rage 2. And I felt it really didn't work with Rage 2.
Yeah.
The combat itself was really good in Rage 2, but I discouraged people from getting the game because a variety of reasons. And one was the world was just so big, and while it did feel alive in some ways, it was just I didn't see the point of it being an open world, and also the story was ridiculously short, and then they tried to sell you additional story as a DLC 3 months after the game came out, which I was like, this is garbage. Buy the whole thing a year from now when they put the Ultimate Edition together that has the entire storyline if you're going to play this game. So an open world combat game, not the first time it's been tried, and but I feel like it worked somehow, despite this game's rocky development. This worked, and I know that it's not. How do I put this? Could they have done a lot more with it? Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
But did they do a good job with what they did? I would say also yes. It's a case where, unlike Cyberpunk 2077, where, if you rate the different aspects of the game, I would say, they did some things mediocre. They did some things good. They did a couple of things really good, but there was a handful of things that were just really poor, which is why nobody's playing it anymore. Halo Infinite, I would say, across the board, everything was good.
Yes.
A couple of mediocres, mostly good, and then a few things really good. So overall, it's a pretty damn good game. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more. And we have a comment from Sunglare here saying it's disappointing. I thought we were supposed to be getting some advanced AI with simultaneous battles going on across the map. Marines could lose and gain ground depending on how much you help them. Stuff like that would be cool.
I don't recall anybody making that claim. I do remember people saying, "Oh, Halo is going to have really advanced AI this time around." I never believed that because despite what a lot of people are saying, "Oh, the AI in Halo was always amazing." No, it wasn't. You could stand like 30 feet away and shoot a brute in the face and he wouldn't move. He would just sit there and take it. That's been the case since Halo 2 and it's the case in this game as well. So I don't know what, like, that is a good point about how 343 and Microsoft were saying that Halo Infinite was supposed to have this upgraded AI tech, but yeah, I don't see it anywhere. It's the same as it's always been, in my opinion.
It may be the same as it's always been. It's miles ahead of some other games I've played recently.
Yeah.
At least, and I mean, I was going to touch on this in the combat when we talk about combat, but it's not. I mean, it's not a stealth game. You can sneak up on groups of enemies and surprise attack them, but they don't run around like morons thinking, where is he? Oh, where? When you're 3 feet away, hiding behind some thin grass. Like, you can be a long way away, and suddenly they all know where you are.
Yeah,
and they're shooting at you. Sometimes I feel like they're a little too perceptive as to where you are. So
Yeah.
But in any case, they're not stupid.
They're like the jackals in particular, the ones with the stalker rifles, they'll snipe you from across the way, which gives me PTSD flashbacks from when they did that in Halo 2 Legendary. Seriously, don't ever try to
the one shot kills from the jackals. Yeah. At least they have those leads now. Like, you can see the little faint little line when they're aiming at you.
Oh yeah, that does help. Yes,
it helps immensely, and I feel like it's not just a cheat either. Like, you could, I just figure Master Chief has some sort of gizmo in his armor that detects when they're taking aim at him, or something like that, right? Anyway, I'll shut up here for a second. I want to hear your thoughts on the open world and how well you think it works compared to previous Halo games.
Yeah, so obviously this was a gamble. This was their first time doing it. It has worked in the past. Like, I think, if I recall correctly, the games in the Far Cry series that came out before Far Cry 2, I think there were a couple. There was just Far Cry Plain, then there was like Far Cry Instincts Predator, and then Far Cry 2. And Far Cry 2 is when they brought the open world element to it, I think. But before that, it was a linear progression, and it worked out well for Far Cry. So it's not like it's unheard of that a change in formula would compromise the entire experience. For Halo, it's the first time they did it, and I have to say that it remarkably works, and I'm terribly glad about that, because for Halo 4 and 5, the reason why a lot of people don't like it, even though, like I said, I did love Halo 4, is because people were consistently comparing it to the archetypal quality of the Bungie games. So that'd be Halo 1 all the way through Halo Reach. And in ways, even though, like I said, I like Halo 4, there were parts of Halo 4, and especially in Halo 5, where they were consistently falling below expectations. And going into Halo 6, people just assumed that because it's 343 and not Bungie, that trajectory was going to continue. But thankfully, it seems like 343 has finally stumbled upon a formula that's going to work for them moving forward. Not only that, because it works so well in Halo Infinite, in my opinion, I can see where there are areas that they can improve upon and where they could go in regards to Halo 7 and 8. With Halo Infinite, even though we do got a really big open world that you can go around completing missions, killing targets, finding collectibles, apparently the original plans, and we learned this just over the last few days based on reporting, I can't remember who did it, but you could probably find this very easily if you just do a search for recent Halo Infinite news. Apparently, 343 intended for the Halo world that we have in Halo Infinite to be either 2 or 3 times bigger. Because, as you'll notice, Ash, in the world that we were offered, there's a distinct lack of biomes. You know, there's no sand levels, there's no snow levels, and those were all over the place in the previous Halo campaigns. Well, the reason why is because they didn't have time to finish those, so they just had to stick to the one biome, which was a lot like the biome that we saw in the second mission in Halo 1, where it's just green all over the place. And it looks good, but, you know, hopefully in Halo 7 and 8, we'll be able to expand to those additional biomes, make the world bigger, give us a whole bunch of different missions with different things that you can do, more upgrades that you can find, different ways to make battles a lot more dynamic and a lot more unexpected. And that pessimism that I had about how 343 was treating the linear campaign formula that was established by Bungie, that's completely gone now that this open world formula clearly has worked so well.
I would anticipate they'll keep going in this direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
I found that if I think about, like, it is very different, and I think it's different in some negative ways. For example, like you said, is very uniform in terms of the biome is the same throughout, which I think from a lore perspective actually makes sense, but from keeping the player's interest perspective, perhaps a negative. Although I haven't gotten sick of it it's a minor negative for me. It's a minor negative at this point. It is true that a lot of the interior levels, you're in these forerunner structures that all kind of look the same. That I agree where, it's a little bit, it gets repetitive. It does get repetitive. Hasn't killed my enjoyment of the game, but it is a point against it in my opinion. But I think it's good. It certainly opened up some other possibilities too. For example, everything is available at the same time. All of the weapons and equipment and vehicles. Yep. You can bring anything you want to any encounter.
Well, actually, no. You have to earn certain vehicles.
Oh, yeah. You have to. Yes, you have to acquire them. But if you're in some part of the map and you haven't unlocked the rocket launcher yet, but you find one somewhere, and some grunt might be carrying them, which is another interesting thing. I mean, it's not. I know we've seen before with the aliens using the human weapons, but I felt when I'm going around in this world, it feels like there's been a long conflict taking place here because there's debris everywhere. It would have been interesting to have maybe some older battlefields where things are burned out and maybe there's skeletons lying around all over the place. That might be more gruesome than they wanted to go with it, but that kind of thing where you're in The Witcher 3 and you go through that place where the battle happened and the creatures are circling around. It would have been cool to have some variety like that. They didn't do that. But basically, you can bring any weapon you want once you've unlocked it, or any vehicle, to any encounter. This was not the case previously. I mean, maybe if you wanted to bring a sniper rifle, maybe you could hang on to it through several missions, but eventually you're going to want to trade it out for whatever's available to you, right? You don't always have everything available to you all the time. It's whatever you pick up from enemies or whatever. Maybe there's an ammo crate or a weapons crate somewhere that you can grab something from. So that really I think that just opened up the possibilities. So my encounter of a particular, or my experience of a particular encounter could be very different from yours. And I had one mission where, where you're opening those 3 big gates, and as I'm approaching and scoping it out, an elite just happened to be flying by in a Banshee. So I climb up this cliffside and I jumped off, grappled it, kicked him out of the Banshee, and attacked the thing in this flying vehicle that just happened to be coming by.
Right.
Stuff like that can happen because of this open world concepts. And so I think it while there are some detriments to it, I think that it's added some things as well. And I think if they can add more in the next game, say, imagine I got this from Skill Up's review, but imagine scarabs just wandering the countryside, or Sunglare's comment, if more faction, the balance of factions, and if you help the Marines out, if they can push into other territories, things like that. I do find it somewhat immersion breaking that after I take back a base from the aliens, it's populated by Marines, But you don't get those Fallout 4 like things where, you know, your colonies would then be attacked and you'd have to defend and, you know, keep them yours. Like the aliens don't try to take back the bases that you've taken from them. And I keep saying aliens, I should say the Banished. But I'm not sure if anyone would know what I'm talking about. The Banished are the alien faction, and it's most of the same different types of aliens from the previous games. But yeah, so the Banished, they don't try to take the bases back unless they do it on a harder difficulty that, you know, and I just haven't encountered that. But
well, what happens, some of the bases will just be reoccupied by the aliens just randomly. Some of them will be completely empty. Others, you can just go to them and fight them, even though they say that they belong to you. But yeah, that'd be a really good idea. It'd be kind of like Metal Gear Solid 5 in that way, where you have your forward operating base that you always return to, but then there'd be random people across the world. That's the multiplayer variant of Metal Gear Solid 5. Okay. They would try to invade your FOB and try to take all your resources. That would be really cool. Just sort of, I would be totally happy if Halo 5 copied that. That'd make it so much more fun.
Let's see here. Isn't Infinite supposed to be this is from Terra K. Isn't Infinite supposed to be the Halo game for the next 10 years or so, with them just expanding it with new content? I thought I remember them saying that way back.
Well, it might be for the next 10 years. I don't think what they're going to do is what they're planning on doing for Assassin's Creed Infinite, or Infinity, whatever they're calling it, where that is actually what they're going to do. I think in the next Halo game, they'll try to sell it on its own.
What is with this naming convention? Halo Infinite, Assassin's Creed Infinity, Doom Eternal, and there was another one that's that's like all of this. It's like this. If you want to make your game sound bigger than the last one, well, you can't go past Infinite. So I don't know. You might have put yourself in a corner.
Of course, you can. Just call it Infinity Squared.
Infinity Squared.
Yeah,
multiverse.
That's what the next Halo will be called, and after that will be Infinity Cubed.
Goodness. Sunglare says, here's a thought. What if all the bragging about new AI wasn't about the new system AI, but the new AI NPC you get in the game? Well, oh yeah, Duke Nukem Forever, yeah. All of those.
Not so much.
Another colony needs your help. I'll mark it on your map. Yes, thank you, IX. Yes, that's what we need. We need Preston to come run up to us and tell us another colony needs our help. Okay. Speaking of the new AI NPC, I know we're kind of blasting through this at rapid pace here, but let's move on to talking about the characters. And I specifically wanted to talk about the pilot, the weapon, Master Chief, and the villain Escharim. Let's talk about the weapon, since someone brought that up. So, someone brought up Cortana, and the weapon is the new Cortana-like AI that has been introduced in the game. What did you think of weapon?
I got 2 words for you. Zoe Deschanel.
Okay.
Yeah, because
was it voiced by Zoe Deschanel, or are you just making a comparison?
No. It's just it's like, you know how Zoe Deschanel's trademark quality is that she's this quirky manic pixie dream girl. That's sort of what I was reminded of while watching The Weapon. Very much not like Cortana, who's very professional and then has sort of a sly sense of humor. That's not who The Weapon is. In my review that I did of the campaign, which I released on today's Wednesday, right? Yeah, I released it on Monday. I said that your appreciation of the new AI will vary. It's a subjective thing. I personally found her to be one of the more mediocre elements of the story. She wasn't annoying or aggravating or like distracting. She was just sort of like, her humor just makes you roll your eyes and that. But there are a couple moments in the story, thankfully, where her interactions with the Master Chief are quite touching and quite relevant, and it made me have some hope for that relationship moving forward. But in this game, it was just meh. I didn't really care.
That's fair. So the relationship specifically between her and Master Chief?
Yeah, there were moments with that I...
Yeah.
No, it's not that I didn't buy into it. She didn't really make it special in the same way that the relationship between Master Chief and Cortana was special. I just found her to be like slightly annoying coworker, right? But yeah, I've seen people in comment sections saying that they love her humor and they love the relationship between her and the Master Chief. I just didn't. It just didn't click for me. That's all.
That's fair. I think it makes sense in a way because she's new. She doesn't have this long relationship with Master Chief that Cortana had. And so in some ways I find this believable. And at first I found her super annoying and I was like, oh God, I hope she's not with us for the whole game. But then she grew on me. And I the reason is because the way she's written, and what really annoyed me was she sounded overacted. Everything said in this chipper, upbeat, sort of faux enthusiastic way. Like,
oh, that was sarcasm. You're funny. I like you.
I think everybody's going to die now. Like, it's just, it really just grated on me. And then I thought, and I don't know if this was the intention of the writers, but I was like, wait a minute, maybe this is intentional. This is her. She's an AI trying to mimic human behavior. And maybe that's the intent. I can't be sure what was in the writers' heads when they did it, but from that perspective, the character started to grow on me, and I thought, like, it's believable in certain ways. Like, she was only supposed to exist for this limited period of time, complete this one task, and then delete herself. She's been kept online, doesn't know what the hell is going on, doesn't know how to interact in all these different ways, and so she kind of is growing and evolving and doesn't have those people skills, doesn't know how to sound like to how to process the emotions that these AIs apparently have, and so how do you and express them in a natural sounding way. That was my thoughts on it. Anyway, I mean, it's subject to interpretation, but
that's actually a really important point, and I'm glad you made that, because it works quite well with, and no spoilers, but there are certain things that happen towards the end of the game that are relevant to what you just said, Ash, and those moments are actually the few that I quite liked. And I hope that in the future of Halo, when they develop this new relationship between Master Chief and this new AI, that trying to find her own identity will become a central part of the story. And if they do it right, then I could probably find myself liking her a lot more.
I see. Yeah, I think she's definitely a character that I hope they develop more going forward. Sunglare says, don't like weapon, not my Cortana. I mean, fair. She's not Cortana. And I mean, Cortana has her own story arc that we won't get into here. I'm not even sure I fully understand it. But Paulie says, the weapon is just like the NFT. You hate it at first, but it will grow on you. Let's talk about the pilot. So,
sure.
New character. We saw him in some of the lead up to the promotional material, promotional videos, trailers, that kind of thing. Character that flies the Pelican, flies Master Chief around. How did you feel about him and his relationship to Master Chief?
Yeah, I found him to be a lot more likable. He introduced the more human element of the story, because Master Chief, even though you see those moments of humanity from within him, they're only moments throughout the entire story of Halo Infinite. Whereas the pilot, he's always trying to bring out that human element at every moment that he's on screen. And then by sort of getting to the heart of all the tragedy that's happening around them on Zeta Halo, and the struggle of the Marines against the Banished and how that's affecting him, when you do see him around the Chief and the Chief acts in a compassionate way, the few times he does, it's a really impactful moment. And those are the few times where I believe that the story really, really worked, and it's largely thanks to him, the pilot.
Yes, I would agree with you on that. And there was, he does seem at first a little one-dimensional, like he's just all about wanting to
neurotic,
get out of there and telling Master Chief why this isn't going to work and why this is going to get them killed. But then you learn more about his character and why he's actually there and how he came to be where he was to pick up and save Master Chief at the beginning of the story. Mm-hmm. And it all started to click for me at that point. And I thought, okay, yeah, he is kind of one-dimensional, but I mean, there's not, you have very limited room to go deep into these characters, right? So yes, he came across as one-dimensional, but when we first meet somebody in real life, they might seem pretty one-dimensional, and then you get to know them and you realize the complexities of their personage, and you realize, oh, this is why they're that way, and there's a lot more to them. And yeah, those moments of vulnerability do come up later.
What I really hope happens with the pilot character moving forward is something akin to what happened with the character of Otacon in Metal Gear Solid, going from 1 to 2, which is, in the first game, Otacon was this very neurotic partner for the main character, Solid Snake. Cowardly, pissing his pants, literally. And then going into Metal Gear Solid 2, he was this very capable partner who is as important to the success of the mission as Snake was. I hope if the writers at 343 are smart, that they'll go in a similar direction and make him sort of like the tactical partner in the same way that Cortana was in the first few games, where she's like opening doors and giving it proper advice about the mission moving forward, alongside the weapon, of course.
Right. Okay, so quickly, Master Chief and Escharum. So Master Chief, how did you feel about how Master Chief was written?
Very happy. Yeah. Very, very happy. What you sort of missed out on in Halo 4 and 5, missed out on, whether that's a positive or negative is
subjective, yeah.
Subjective, yeah. A lot of people weren't too happy with the way that Master Chief was portrayed in 4 and 5, because unlike how he was portrayed in the first 3 Halo games, he spoke a lot. He became more of a fleshed out character. And I tend to agree with people that say they weren't too happy about that, because part of what makes Master Chief what he is, a part of what makes him such a charming, a badass character, is the fact that he's very quiet. He rarely ever speaks, and when he does, it's a momentous occasion. When he speaks, he's usually saying something really badass, like, I need a weapon. And then, in Halo 2, when the commander's like, what do you plan on doing, Master Chief? He's like, I'm going to get the Covenant back their bomb. And it's just like, you want to beat your chest and just go, grrr, it's just that. That's how still it inspires.
My favorite. Yeah, it's my favorite moment in all the Halo games, that one right there.
Of course.
That was dope. That was so badass, yeah.
Because it's awesome. And in Halo Infinite, we see that return to that muted badassery that Master Chief was in those first few games. Granted, though, because it is a more personal story focused around the characters, Master Chief does talk more than he does in those original few games, but it's only at points that are relevant to the story. And even then, when he does talk, it's in very short sentences, very to the point. He just says what he needs to say, and then he gets back to shooting grunts in the face.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's what he is in this. And there's even like this, but there are like a few key moments where you see a little deeper into his character that I appreciated, but just enough that it wasn't out of character.
Mm-hmm. You say more about Master Chief by getting him to say less. You sort of leave his inner monologue up to interpretation.
Yeah. And less is more. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, and Tara K in the chat makes a really good point. Master Chief is kind of like the good-aligned Boba Fett. Why is Boba Fett so awesome? Because he's behind a mask, he rarely ever speaks, yet what we know about him is very, very interesting, and sort of projecting qualities onto him based on what we know is sort of part of the fun. It's part of the intrigue. And you get that exactly with Master Chief.
Mm-hmm. Okay, quickly, Escharum. How do you feel about Escharum?
Just stereotypical bad guy for the most part.
I
wasn't too happy with him. Yeah, he. What can I say without spoiling things? Okay, I'll just repeat what I said in my campaign review, because it's sort of hard to talk about it without giving away spoilers. And the game is less than a week old, I think.
When did it come out? On the 8th? Jeez, and it's a week old.
It was a week, right before last week's show. I played the first couple hours of it.
Yeah, Escharum, aside from one or two things that happened towards the end of the game where his motivation as a villain becomes really intriguing, for the most part, you just see him in holograms throughout the game. And it's like when you accomplish something, he's like, oh, well, wait until you see this next threat. And it's going to be so scary, I swear. And then he just repeats that 10 times throughout the rest of the game when you keep taking out targets and gaining outposts and all that. And then, well, I can't say what happens between him and the Master Chief at the end of the game because that'd be a spoiler. But yeah, for the most part, just stereotypical bad guy. And yeah, it doesn't live up to the villainy of the prophets from the original trilogy or the scariness of the Flood.
Right. I'm inclined to agree. He seems kind of true to form in some ways to what the big bads have been throughout Halo, but at the same time, yeah, it's like generic, low-talking villain who adheres to a radical ideology. Like, it's very, stereotypical, generic.
There are seeds there for something that could have been better, and hopefully they can...
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, I think that seems to be a recurring theme here. Is could have been better, but isn't bad. Could have been better, but is good. I think is my impression of most aspects of this game, and then some aspects were really, really good. Like the combat, I think was done really well. I mean, it didn't do anything spectacular, and like it was Halo combat, smooth, polished, fun. But I guess the big thing that they changed was the addition of the grapple hook, or the grapple shot, which I think is amazing.
Best thing ever, man. Best thing they added to those games ever since they added equipment in Halo 3. It's so much fun to use that.
Yeah. And it's a great combat tool in addition to being able to Spider-Man all over the world and get pretty much anywhere. I think there's a few spots you actually need a flying vehicle to get to. But there were a lot of places where I was like, I'm never going to be able to... You can go up a perfect 90-degree incline with your grapple shot.
And
it's
awesome.
I think, that's great, because that gets around the whole thing with Skyrim is like, okay, can I climb this mountain, or do I need to like find the long winding path, which might be completely on the other side?
Well, technically, you can climb any mountain in Skyrim. It's just you have to zigzag from left to right and constantly spam the jump button.
Right.
It might take you an hour, but you can do it.
So you can use an input exploit, or you can,
take the actual.
But this is the grapple shot is an intended way of doing it, and so it's it doesn't break immersion again.
Message to all people in the gaming industry. If you add a grapple hook to your game, it gets an additional 2 points in quality. Like if you were at a 4 out of 10, add a grapple hook and it's immediately a 6 out of 10, an above average game. Trust me, there's never been a circumstance where a grapple hook has been added to a game and it wasn't awesome. They need to hire me on, like these companies, just as a consultant. And all I'll just say is 2 words, grapple hook, done. Next.
I think that I mean, I'm trying to think what other games had the grappling hook.
Just Cause.
Like a lot of them have them, but there's limited things you can link onto. Like you have to shoot it at designated grappling points, whereas in this game it can connect to almost anything. You can hook it to almost any surface, almost any enemy. There's only certain surfaces that it'll bounce off of and not take effect. That's not, and to have that work well, to have that work without being all glitchy, and to have it work where you're not shooting the players into the out of bounds without meaning to, I think is quite a technical accomplishment. So, kudos to them for pulling that off. because you got to account for that in your level design. You can no longer assume, oh, the player won't get up here. Or, oh, we can't just cheat and put in invisible ceilings because that'll suddenly becomes immersion breaking. So that, I think they pulled it off. That was really well. That's one of the excellent points in my opinion. Story and mission design we've kind of talked about a little bit. Let's just specifically talk about the mission design. So you do have your linear missions with your big Halo set pieces, which is one of the things that a lot of reviewers have been talking about. You know, where are our big, vast Halo set pieces? They are there, though I think they're smaller than normal. I think they're small. They're smaller than the missions in most Halo games.
Yes.
Is that your impression as well? Yeah, because
yes,
they're toned down though. They're toned down, and a lot of them do feel kind of the same because you're going again through these forerunner structures that they are all made of this glassy metal material that looks really good. It looks really good, but does get very repetitive.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of the few linear missions that they have there because most of them are interiors, and again, they all look the same. It's when the game opens up beyond those first couple missions where it is linear missions, and you get out into Zeta Halo and you go to, taking out the targets, getting the FOBs, where it really begins to open up. And then you got a few of those linear missions towards the end of the game, which are a little bit more interesting because it's closer to the end of the game. You get a boost in power. You get to do certain things that, without spoiling too much, it kind of reminds me of the last level in Half-Life 2, which is cool. But yeah, beyond that, you don't have those big set pieces like in Halo 3 where you're in the tank or the Hornet and you're going up against those gigantic scarabs, right? Nothing like that in Halo. Thankfully, it's the baseline gameplay, which is so finely tuned and so much fun, that makes those lack of set pieces not as noticeable. It's noticeable, but it's not distractingly noticeable. Hopefully in future games they'll be able to add stuff like that where, as you pointed out before, Ash, the idea of scarabs just roaming the world of Halo and then you just fly down to them and take them out. That sounds so cool. I hope they add that.
That'd be super cool, especially if it's like, all these things are going around just, taking out all our guys. Like, can you take them down? And it's a super challenge to take them all down. And that's one thing I really did enjoy. I enjoyed the open world missions. Some of them part of the main story, some of them side missions. But going to these facilities, figuring out, destroying the banished infrastructure, basically, or like checkpoints that they've set up, or their production plants, that kind of a thing. I enjoyed those missions. I've heard some complaints that it's basically just go in, shoot everybody, blow up these things, and you're done. Well, that's what Halo is. I mean, what is Halo if it's not like it's a combat game? Again, it's not an RPG where you can just run in and do the attack, or you could try to negotiate, or you could try to be stealthy, or there's multiple ways to deal with a problem. No, this is Halo. You go in and you shoot stuff and you blow stuff up. That's what you do. So I felt it fit. But, I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion. The goal with this is to try and give all of you the, what you're getting into if you decide to pick up this game. We want you to know what you're getting into, and if it sounds appealing to you, then it's definitely recommended. If you want something deeper, like you can't go into it expecting more than what it is, though. And so I think that was the big mistake with Cyberpunk 2077. I think that Microsoft did well by not revealing too much beforehand. And when they did reveal it, we told them that looks like crap, and they went and fixed it. This needed that extra year of development for sure.
Yeah,
and kudos
really
to them for doing it.
From it.
Yeah, kudos to them for doing it, because the game looks amazing now. I think Blue Arrow sums it up really well in the chat, saying, I think Halo Infinite is a promising direction for the future of the Halo games, back to its roots like the first game.
Agreed.
Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, sub, and hit that notification bell, and then check out some of these other videos. Find the link to our Discord server and other important stuff in the description below.
What?